Okay, so Unit 9.3, Part 1. It's going to be short. This is kind of going to just begin the interwar years after World War I, which is termed the Age of Anxiety. It's really a time period that will cover 1914 to 1950, but we're going to focus mainly on the time period right after World War I up to World War II, and then of course when we finish World War II, we're going to talk about the Age of Anxiety there. So 1914 to 1950 are our time periods, but mainly focusing up to World War II here. So we know that World War I is going to change the world, or the Great War is going to change the world. And as you can see from my graphic here, the World War I is going to be kind of this final blow to the old days, and we're going to see an age of new days, or the age of anxiety. So World War I is going to result in an end to the old order. An end of the rules we've talked about are the Hohenzollerns in Germany, the Habsburgs in Austria, and the Romanovs in Russia. All of those guys being gone after World War I. We just killed off Nicholas II in our last lecture. Democracies in Europe are going to remain intact or take root. So places that haven't had democracies are going to try out democracy. Remember, it's kind of this time period of like, ooh, like how did we get here? Everybody killing each other and building these trenches over like 2 miles of land and all of this loss of life. So people are going to reevaluate what they thought about life and try some new things. So maybe democracies if you hadn't had it, or you're going to try to strengthen your democracy. France and Britain are going to remain democratic. Germany will become a democracy with the Weimar Republic. And so remember, the people declaring we are a republic, but we're going to see how that works out. The new country, new state of Czechoslovakia will become democratic. And then on the flip side of that, in the 1920s, communist totalitarianism, which we're really going to take a look at specifically in Unit 10 with Hitler and Stalin, etc., will take root in Russia. Fascism will emerge in Italy, fascism in Germany in the 1930s. Political crises in the 1920s will be followed by the Great Depression beginning in 1921. So we're going to see like crisis after crisis after crisis that result of all of this craziness of World War I, and then capped off by the Great Depression, and then the road to World War II in the 1930s. So we're going to start to see this theme of like life is always bad. There is nothing, like right after one crisis is another. So this is very different than when we were going into the end of the 19th century and the Belle Epoque and like everything is grand and the great century. We're going to see now things really change and people start to see life as kind of miserable and always bad. The New World in the aftermath of World War I is going to create what is known as an age of anxiety, and we're going to talk about like what that anxiousness is. World War I, hence my graphic here, was a staggering blow to Western civilization. Many people will feel as if the world they knew had been turned upside down, and they had little control to change things for the better. And this lack of like control, of like I can't control my destiny, I can't control my country's destiny, is going to lead to this anxiousness. I mean, World War I is going to, we saw, lead to like the revolutions in Russia. And then we're going to see leading us up to World War II, and then the Cold War, and then 9/11. I mean, so things just like boom, 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 bad, and people start to get more of a, this is not a romantic view. And as much as I love romanticism, I'm much more of, the rational enlightenment kind of standpoint. So things are going to go like whoosh all the way to the other end, to the other side here, and kind of be, it's not one of my favorite topics either, but like we're really totally disregarding rationalism, but not in a romantic way. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. People saw themselves living in an age of continual crisis, like I said, at least until the early 1950s. World War I, then we saw revolutions at the end of the war, as I just said, political and financial crises in the 1920s, the Great Depression, World War II, the onset of the Cold War, blah, 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 then 9/11. I mean, you can just see all of this is going to breed to show that, like, people, maybe the Enlightenment thinkers were wrong and people are so irrational, because how could it be rational to have all of this chaos? And so we need to talk about some modern philosophy. We're going to cover after the war in our next lecture, but after the war, new and upsetting ideas began to spread through the entire population, and that's a result of this anxiousness, or this feeling of like, how can human beings be rational if all of this rational stuff is going on? Before 1914, most people still believed in the Enlightenment ideas of progress, reason, and the rights of the individual. Like, they really were rooted in this. Optimistic pre-World War I view was the result of significant progress of the past 2 centuries, that Belle Epoque that we talked about. They were like, wow, people really are great. We really can get stuff done. We're going to see this shattered with World War I. But there had been some people before the war who had been like, nah, just wait for that other shoe to fall. Like, this is just this is an illusion. This isn't real. Things are going to get bad. And so critics of the pre-war world had anticipated many of the post-war ideas. And so people are going to kind of look at some of the stuff written before the war by these four individuals we're going to talk about today and be like, man, they were right. People are irrational. And so these pre-war critics are going to reject the general faith in progress and the power of the rational human mind and really start to say, can we progress? People aren't rational, and you can see that by people building a trench 2 feet from each other and fighting over 2 miles of land for all of this loss of life. So the first of our pre-war critics is going to be Friedrich Nietzsche, and the one we're going to talk about in the most detail today because he's one of the most important critics of the rationalism of the Enlightenment. He is a German philosopher, and I'll try to not let my bias like in romanticism show through, but if you think about like romantics and then like Enlightenment, this is like the whole opposite. So you have romanticism on the left of a timeline, then rationalism in the middle, then all the way to the right is going to be Nietzsche and these individuals we talk about that are pre-war critics. And then in his work, Thus Spake Zarathustra, 1883 to 1885, he's going to blast religion and famously claim that God is dead in the hearts, in the minds of modern man. He is going to say that God has been was killed off by enlightened rationalism and science. Like it's killed him. He is dead. And then if God is dead, then morality is dead. And if morality is dead, then your purpose and your reason is also dead. So there's no right or wrong, and there's no purpose, and all of this has been killed. And he's going to claim then that Christianity embodied a slave morality which glorified weakness, envy, and mediocrity. He's going to say, that Christianity has become like the slave morality, like harkening back to the children of Israel, like it's like enslaving people. It's Christianity, but God is dead. And the individualism then had been quashed by society, that you have been asked to fit into a herd or a group. And so you're being contained by this like slavery, by what society is telling you to do, but that people are rational and that this is just, it's smushing you, smushing your individuality. And so we'll go into more detail, and as I give you more quotes, I think it'll be easier to understand. And so here you can see those ideas. So if God is dead, it's been killed by rationalism and science, the Enlightenment. But left behind, even though God is dead, people are still not realizing he's dead. And Christianity had left a set of these cultural values that people are basing their lives on, although the purpose of those lives is gone, and they just haven't realized it because they haven't woken up to it yet. And then so his tenet is, if you accept God is dead, then morality and purpose must be dead too, and along with that, reason as well. And so you can start to see how some anxiety would come out of that, if we followed the church along to say that all of this is dead. But then he's going to continue on, and in his next work, In Will to Power of 1888, he's going to write that only the creativity of a few supermen, or Übermenschen, which is the German word for supermen, could successfully reorder the world. And he's going to say that so there are a few people who can break free from this herd mentality of Christianity and can escape the herd. And though his book is not going to be widely read by his contemporaries, his writings are going to be really relevant in the atmosphere of post-World War I pessimism. He's going to say that, you have to break free. Like, look what all of these things have done. And these few will be able to break free and create their own ethics or break the mold. And we're going to see, like, fascist dictators such as Hitler will be strongly influenced by his ideas. Like, look at me. I am one of the elite. I'm breaking free. Like, don't listen to this over here. You have to take matters into your own hands, embrace the meaninglessness of life, and turn it into liberation. And so each should go out and create their own set of ethics, and you can see how this could be really dangerous. Like, don't listen to those people over there that say killing Jews is bad. I'm breaking free, and this is what is, because there's no purpose, no reason, no morality. This is what's best at this time, and we'll get into how he backs up that this could be possible, or how it's going to be embraced in this post-war world. And so some quotes to kind of back up what Nietzsche's trying to say here by embracing the meaningless of life and turning it into liberation. He's going to, say, do what you want to do, and that faith is not wanting to know what is true. So faith has kept you locked and not really finding out what is true or what is best for you, and that the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, and by the tribe he means the group, or the group that you've been stifled by. If you try it, you will be lonely often because you're breaking free, one of those elite, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself instead of being owned by the group. So he's really just saying, do you want to be free, or do you want to fit in? And this is really like where that anxiety comes. Like, should I break free from look at all of the bad things that this group is allowed to happen? Like, maybe I haven't seen the truth and I should break free from this group. And it's from Nietzsche that we also get this quote: he turns all of his injuries into strengths. That which does not kill him makes him stronger. He is Superman. So we have that reference again into the few Supermen who would successfully reorder the world by breaking free. And so, I think, we know Kelly Clarkson totally paraphrased him here, so it doesn't come from her. This is actually from Nietzsche. What does not kill him makes him stronger. So while you're going to be frightened and you're often going to be alone, if it does not kill you, it will make you stronger once you're out of the herd. You are the Superman who is going to help lead the reorder of the world. And so Nietzsche's going to continue that kind of anti-Christian view as religion as a herd with this next quote. If you kind of think of it like Jesus had asked, you be sheep that you be followers, and he's going to really take that and promote, that you need to break free from this herd with anti-Christian view. He says, I regard Christianity as the most fatal, seductive lie that has yet existed, as the great unholy lie. I draw out of the aftergrowth and sprouting of its ideal from beneath every form of disguise. I reject every compromised position with respect to it. I force a war against it. And so he is just really going to say that these Supermen are going to be the ones that realize that you need to get out of this lie. Like, God is dead, and the sooner you realize it and you put into your own hands your ability to find, because there's nothing right or wrong. And so really you can see where this ancientness goes. Like, what if you knew there was no hell? What if you didn't have to worry about breaking these moral rules because there was not a punishment for it, but you're going to be doing what's best for you, or best for as you're moving forward? And so you can see that anxiety as this would build in this time period, especially once World War I has happened. They're going to be like, yeah, like, where were these values and morality? It definitely wasn't cool to go kill a bunch of people. And so we're going to see as we move on with some more quotes from Nietzsche how he explains then what you need to do next. So his answer then is, so if you've left the Christian herd, that was your guiding, like what was right and wrong. So what's his answer to what is good, what is bad? He says, what is good? Everything that heightens the feeling of power in man, the will to power itself. And so you can start to see how people like Hitler are going to gravitate towards this. What is good is what heightens your feeling of power. That's going to be, why would Hitler say that then not having all that power? That's what's good. This is what Nietzsche is saying. You got to break free from the herd. And what is good then is not those moral values guiding, but what heightens your sense of power. And then he'll also say that fear is the mother of morality. And so that the only reason people were doing what they thought was good is because of their fear of what was going to happen to them. He says, but what if I didn't tell you that there is no hell? Then where's that fear? You can kind of see, do you do things because you're fearful of getting in trouble? If you don't, he's going to say, what if that fear is gone? And all that is left is what increases your power. And so he's starting to explain is that only fear makes you good, and if you're letting go of that fear, that group mentality, you can escape that. You can create your own ethics. You can break the mold. So just a couple more quotes. I think one more after this slide, just to kind of try to explain Nietzsche's viewpoint, because it can be just like the Romantics. You can get kind of lost in it. And so he's going to continue on, God is dead. He has stated that multiple times. But considering the state of the species or of humankind, there will perhaps be caves for ages yet in which his shadow will be shown. So he's not there, but what's continuing him, what's trying to hide from you that he's dead, is churches. And so the caves are churches, and they are misleading people that there is still, the fear to be had from the wrath of God. And he's also going to go on to say the surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold a higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. And so this continuation of these caves is by, you should look up to those priests. You should look up to the Pope. You should respect their authority over you, rather than being the one that breaks free and thinks differently. So our last quote from Nietzsche here, as we're getting ready to move into our last three individuals of pre-war critics, is going to be, he who does not obey himself will be commanded. And so it really just hammers home that he who does not follow his individual desire, who does not break free from the group, will forever just be commanded and told what to do. And so really just to summing Nietzsche up, be free. Be free from all of these traps of the tribe or the group. Be free of this proposed idea of rationalism. Be free from the church. Just be free. Be free to obey yourself. And so our next individual is Henri Bergson, 1859 to 1941. And in the 1890s, he's going to convince many young people that immediate experience and intuition were as important as rational and scientific thinking for understanding reality. And so he is going to say it is not rationalism and scientific thinking that you are going to use to find what is true, but your own personal experiences and intuition. And so it kind of continues that train of thinking, like your personal experience and intuition or your gut is going to be different than someone else's. So everyone kind of has their own vision of what is right and wrong. There's not a set thing, so you can see, like, that's what the anxiousness is. What is right? Like, my personal gut, is it right, or your personal gut is right? But he's going to say it is not rationalism and scientific thinking that you can use to find what is true, but your own personal experiences and your intuition. And so our third individual is Georges Sorel, 1847 to 1922, and he's going to give us syndicalism, which is just really a derivative or a manifestation of anarchism that we've studied previously. He is going to believe that socialism would come to power through a great violent strike of all working people. So you can think about who that sounds like. I mean, he's kind of taking Marx's ideals here, like workers of the world will unite and a revolution will be started. He believed Marx was more of an inspiring religious idea, not a rational truth. So he's going to, take more of the anarchism side and create his syndicalism through that. His ideas are really going to foreshadow the Bolshevik Revolution with that idea of control by an elite few. And so we see that his kind of all of this angst of World War I is going to say, that we need this giant revolution to undo all of what's come before, and that an elite few, just kind of like the Supermen, need to step up and need to come to control. And so our next individual is someone we've already talked about, and this is going to be Sigmund Freud. And so it's kind of a review here, but how it applies to this pre-World War I critic of human rationalism. Remember, I lumped him together with one of the three most important thinkers of the 19th century, along with Marx and Darwin. And so we're going to see his theories as it applies in science to the human condition and this pre-war criticism of rationalism and enlightenment. And so as we've talked about, Freudian psychology is going to seem to reflect the spirit of the earliest 20th century with its move from rationalism to human irrational response. Remember, it's going to emphasize that men and women are greedy, grasping, and irrational creatures. And people after World War I are going to be like, man, he was right. Like, what was like, people were greedy and grasping and irrational. Because, like, what rational being would build these trenches right next to each other and kill each other over just a couple miles of land. So people are going to go, man, like maybe he was right. Like maybe we can't classify ourselves as rational beings, because what if any of this is rational? And Freudian psychology is going to become an international movement by 1910 and receive popular attention after 1918, especially in Protestant countries of Northern Europe and the U.S. And so we're going to follow this into the age of anxiety. And so now we're going to move into, the tenements of Freudian psychology, which we've covered, so it'll go quick, but how it applies to this criticism here. And so if you remember, Freud is going to assert because the human unconsciousness, or what he calls the id, as you can see from our iceberg here again, is driven by sexual, aggressive, and pleasure-seeking desires, and therefore proves that humans are not rational. It's your pleasures that drive you to do stuff, and like a 2-year-old, like want. And you don't have any control over that you're led by irrational desires. And then he's going to say that then the id is going to battle the other parts of the human mind, which are the ego and the superego. And so then the ego is going to be like that rational part of your brain, or that rationalizing conscious that mediates what a person can do. So like what you've kind of been told, like, oh, what I can do. And then if you'll remember, the superego is what I call like is your moral values and what you should do. And so I always said the superego shoulds all over you, and it's what like some students have called like your conscience, like, oh, like what is the herd mentality of what is right and wrong. And so together these ideas of Freud's are going to shatter the Enlightenment view of rationality and progress, because what control do you really have on it? And if those guiding moralities are not correct, telling you what to do, and then how rational can it really be? And so putting Freud together with where we started with Nietzsche, Freud is going to agree with Nietzsche that the mechanisms of rational thinking and traditional moral values can be too strong on the human psyche. Like these, that herd mentality is just too much for your psyche, and they're causing you to repress, like especially your sexual desires, too effectively, crippling your individuality, crippling individuals and entire peoples with guilt and neurotic fears, and that we are suppressing who we are too much, our rational desires too much, and this is going to create issues and fears and neurotic fears, and cause you to, not do what you need to do, and develop itself in neuroses. And so why do you weigh 500 pounds? You're eating all that because you're suppressing your irrational desires. You're oppressing that id, and it's going to cause, all of these issues within yourself. And that the solution to this then is to go and do whatever you want to do. And so as you can see in your notes here, that after World War I, the popular interpretation of Freud reflected and encouraged growing sexual experimentation, particularly among middle-class women. And so you're going to see a lot of these middle-class women be like, oh, we're finally free at last. You remember, like, with some of the works of Romanticism, we heard, like, they were talking about, the middle class values, but those weren't really there. And so they would say, that they were suppressing themselves too much, and that's what caused all of their problems. And so we're going to start to see a lot of people be like, well, if you're a lesbian, go out and say you're lesbian, and be free and start to experiment sexually, because if you don't, you're suppressing your individuality, and it's going to show itself, its ugly head, with all these neuroses and fears and issues that you're going to have. And so we're going to see opponents and enthusiasts of Freud saying that the first requirement for mental health is an uninhibited sex life. But it really is going to encourage people to break free from that herd and to be a healthy human being, and to find what's right for yourself, to go out and let go of these social controlling things that tell you what you shouldn't do or what's wrong. And so that's really the overcap of, you can see how the anxiety of people will be like, oh, I don't know, but then others embracing like the individuality. And so those are our pre-war critics. We're going to pick up with part 2 with the post-war, letter C here, post-war philosophers and authors that expand on this early pessimism before the war, after World War I, and how they take this and move into the age of anxiety. And we'll pick up there this week.